In this video, we're going to entertain the question, what is a digital image? And when I say that, obviously I don't mean a kind of common sense description, which would be like, you know, stuff I see on a screen. We're looking for sort of a much more kind of robust and thoughtful and fundamental way of describing what digital images actually are. So there are two types of digital images, raster-based and vector-based. And those are two completely separate categories that we can use to describe the way that digital images are formed technologically. So if we think about vector images, you can see we have our little kitty here. Vector images are lines drawn between points, and if you think about how they're composed, the sort of underlying structure of a vector image would be a bunch of coordinates, basically. So if you think of coordinates on like an XY grid. Now, of course, some people actually do hand code vector images. Other people like to use software like Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Photoshop, which we're going to be getting into very soon, has some vector capabilities, but it's not primarily a vector-based software program. The other type of digital image, a raster-based image, is also called sometimes a bitmap. We can also refer to it as a pixel-based image. That seems a little more commonplace. Raster or pixel-based images are made up entirely of pixels. They are usually not meant to be kind of hand-coded, and they're generally used for photos and other things that need a kind of continuous tone. So by continuous tone, I mean this sort of like shift here in this cat burrito. You may notice that it has this really delicate shift from dark to light here. That's the kind of thing that you could never get with a vector-based image. So this image is just much better suited to a raster image. In this slide, you can see a side-by-side comparison of the vector image, which, as you can see, looks incredibly crisp, and the raster image magnified. You might observe that the raster or pixel-based image looks good when it's sort of zoomed out at its intended resolution. We'll get into resolution later. But when it's magnified, you start to really notice the pixels, and it starts to kind of fall apart. So there are pros and cons to whether you choose to use a vector image or a raster image. The vector images, we will be kind of looking a tiny weeny bit at vector images in this class. When we're working in Rhino 3D, we're going to be working with vectors. And the files that we produce are going to be vector files. They'll just be in 3 dimensions. We can also easily kind of clip vector files from our 3D files. So it's kind of a strong way to work. If you're a designer or if you're working with any kind of like mechanical design, vector is definitely the way to go. It has some distinct advantages. It is infinitely scalable. So our example back here of the vector image made, 7 times larger, you could make it 700 times larger and it would still look crisp and beautiful. And so that's really the main benefit of vector images. It also is precise. If you're doing any kind of mechanical design or like CAD work, then you definitely want to be in a kind of vector space. As I pointed out before, it works really well for illustrations and for graphic design. So anything where you want a crisp boundary between two colors, that's vector image is going to be a good choice. So for example, most logos are designed in a vector format. So another benefit of vector files is that they're really small. So for example, if we go back to this, if this were a raster image and we were to just save it at exactly this resolution, it would probably be like about maybe a megabyte, so that's 1000K. Let's just estimate about 1000K, or 1 megabyte. If we were to take this and save it as a vector file, it's probably going to be about 30K maybe. So that's almost, 500 times smaller. So it's drastically smaller. Now, of course, when you start, making kind of added complexities, it can magnify the size of your file. So even vector files can get large, but generally speaking, they're really tiny. The other big benefit is that they are web readable. So there is a vector format called SVG. You can use it in Adobe Illustrator, or you can save your files as this file format, and you can actually look at these in a web browser. So that's kind of neat. It's got some big disadvantages though. Some of the huge disadvantages are some formats need special software. So if you're using the Adobe Illustrator format, for example, you are going to have a hard time possibly looking at it in other forms of software. It's pretty well established. So that really depends on the software program that you're using to create the vector graphic. But there are certainly some file formats that you need, something like Illustrator. In other words, you may not be able to preview them in Preview or Acrobat, or something that you would just have on any computer. So another big drawback to vector images is that you can do blending to kind of capture like the fading of a light source or something like that. But it's not really that good. It usually doesn't look that good, and it's a lot of work to do it, and then you end up with a giant file. So it's not really like the greatest solution. The other big problem with vector graphics is that continuous tone does not exist. So if you look at a vector graphic, you'll notice that instead of a smooth gradient, it'll have kind of steps in it. So if this light source behind me were actually, part of a vector file, it would start to have, kind of steps between different tones that are very similar. And some people think that looks cool. Some people don't like it. It's not really a terrible thing. It's just, it's a thing. And it's something that you should know if you're thinking about using vector graphics. So raster images, on the other hand, are also not perfect. Probably 90% of the uses for raster and pixel-based images are for photos and continuous tone photos. A lot of people do design artwork, like illustrated artwork, using raster-based tools, and that's fine. But if you look at our cons list, it's not scalable. So that's not really like something that you can't get around, or that you can't work with, but it's just as I said before, you really kind of have to know that going in. So if you know that something's not scalable, you could potentially design it at the highest resolution you possibly can, knowing that you can't really make it any larger. And of course, you know, there are no rules, so you can make it larger. You just can't make it like 50 times larger or 100 times larger. You can definitely make it probably 1.5, twice as large without having much of a problem. But it's that sort of extreme scalability that it does not have. So I guess if we're thinking about cons, I'll also point out that the file size can be large and cumbersome. So I was actually just cleaning out my hard drive so that I can make these videos, and I was reminded that I have these fern images that I made a couple of years ago, and I was just like, what is taking up all that space on my hard drive? And these images, I don't know why I made them quite so high resolution. It was kind of silly. They were like 4.5 gigabytes for one image, like one poster image that was like this big. And that's just like ridiculous. That was just overkill, basically, on my part. But the point is, you know, that 4.5 gigabytes, that's like 2 movies. You know, it's a lot of hard drive space. And so you definitely, you know, when you start working with high quality photo images, you do have to kind of think about managing your hard drive space, and maybe even having like a secondary hard drive to hold all the stuff. So they are, as I said, okay, we'll think about the pros of the raster / pixel image, and it's great for photos. In fact, it's really the only, I mean, you can't do photos with vector graphics, so it's really the only class of digital image that you can work with when you have a photo. It renders continuous tone. It's if you're looking for photo detail, I mean, pixels are definitely the way to go. It also has the benefit of having some compressed formats for the web. So you'll see a lot of images on the web using the JPEG format. And that is something that works really well to reduce the, you know, kind of file size of this given image file. It does use what's called lossy compression. So if you kind of over compress it, you can start to see. And so we'll look at some crappy JPEGs in a little while when we kind of get further into Photoshop stuff. But it is something that you can kind of go too far with. But for the most part, compression is awesome, and it helps you get your files into a kind of format where you can upload them easily to your website, you know, whatever photo sharing website you use. I'm kind of a Google Photos person. So all that stuff is really made possible by compression. So we'll talk about that in you know, a week or two when we do more Photoshop work. Okay. So as I said before, in this class we will almost exclusively work with pixel-based images. So there may be some opportunities to show you ways to work with vector-based images, but as far as I can recall, and I should be able to recall because I looked at this yesterday, as far as I can recall, we're not asking you to do any vector-based projects for your assignments, and we're not asking you to turn in any vector-based artwork. I do, however, want you to kind of think about in the future that vector-based images are a thing that you could potentially use in the future, and they are awesome, and they're really good for certain things. So don't forget that. So when we think about a pixel image, several things come to mind. But I think what comes to mind most easily is just the pixel itself. What is a pixel? And we'll think about that in a couple of minutes, but a pixel is something that is going to be multiplied to form a file. And that file is basically a collection of pixels. So when we save that file, we're going to look at several of these file formats as we move through Photoshop. So there are things like TIFF, JPEG, PNG. There's probably 24 pixel-based file formats. Today we're going to work with JPEG. And JPEG is the most common at this point of pixel-based image file formats. It's a pretty great file format. I mean, there's a reason why so many images on the internet are made to be JPEGs. The only kind of thing that you should really think about JPEG, though, is when you're looking at an image out on the internet, on Google, you really don't have to think about anything like resolution or how many inches it is or whatever. Really, the only thing that matters is pixel size. And pixel size is literally the dimensions of the width and height of the image in pixels. I made some sort of like conceptual maps for you. So we have little excited kitty over here, and this image is a JPEG image, and it is 256 by 256 pixels. This image is also now it's a pixel-based image because I saved it as a pixel-based image. And it is also 256 by 256. Now, if I were to take this image and, reduce the width and the height by 50%, I would come out with a 128 pixel image. And you can see it's about, half as large. So that idea of pixel size is relatively new. It doesn't apply to anything that you're going to print. It really applies only to stuff that you're going to put on the internet or things that are going to be part of a video. That is the point at which you would address something with its pixel size. So because when we do our first assignment, we're going to be working with internet images, we're using pixel size. So if we think about like what is actually, inside the JPEG, of course the answer is it's not full of a bunch of pixels that, you can just kind of like dump out and they'll, come out on the floor. Of course it's full of code. And that's not a huge surprise. Pretty much every file on your computer is, made of some type of code or markup. And JPEGs and image files are actually no different. So what we're going to do is we're going to look kind of under the hood of a JPEG image. And I have a particular JPEG image picked out. So what you get is something like this. So we'll see this in a text editor. As I said as I put in the last slide, some different text editors that you might want to try are Notepad++ is really great for this upcoming assignment. Atom, you can do it with just plain old TextEdit, which still should come with the Mac. You may have to download it from the App Store. I think it's called BB Edit now. In any case, multiple things work. Text editors are kind of a dime a dozen. And, what you get when you open up the JPEG in a text editor is basically what probably any reasonable person would call gobbledygook. It's not really gobbledygook. It's machine-readable code. So what that means is that this is not code that is designed to be read by a person, so that they can, you know, cut and paste it and, you know, put it into another project. This is meant to be read by a software program. And so what we're looking at is basically ASCII code. So that doesn't mean that we can't do stuff with it, though. Our first assignment in this class, it's a kind of a just like a warm-up assignment. I'm asking you all to make a glitched image. And so a glitched image would look something like this. These are some very advanced examples. And so if you think about the idea of the glitch, it's really taking an image and kind of breaking it. And we're going to break our image by using a text editor and kind of cutting and pasting chunks of code in and out of it. I will say that the other reason why I'm giving you this assignment is just on a purely technical level. It's becoming slightly less common, particularly with internet storage, like Google Drive or Box or something like that. But there is such a thing as data corruption, and particularly with larger files, larger image files. You may find yourself in a situation where you import your file into Photoshop and it has all these weird pink stripes in it, or something like that. If it has, you know, anything there that looks like it's not supposed to be there and it's, you know, in some kind of straight line, I can absolutely guarantee you that your file has been corrupted. And what that means is basically that your file, the code in your file has been somehow edited kind of against its will, or, you know, it's been edited in a way that, you know, prevents it from displaying correctly. So it's pretty much, I think, happened to everyone who works in, you know, the computer arts. So after doing this assignment, you'll have a very clear idea of what it looks like. I've had data corruption from hard drives, flash drives, you know, back in the day, optical media, even networked storage can sometimes, you know, corrupt your files. It has happened to me once or twice on Google Drive. So it's definitely something to look out for. The bad thing about data corruption is that it's not really repairable. So once you kind of get there, you're done. So what's the solution? Keep a backup. Okay, so let's get ready to crack open TextEdit, and we will glitch an image. Okay, so I'm here on my desktop, and you can see that I'm just going to use a Finder window to navigate to an image file that you may have seen before. Pretty sure you have. It's that. It's our title screen for the course. So what I'm going to do, I went ahead and made a little sample glitch beforehand. So I'm going to throw this in the trash. And I'm going to go ahead and take this file and I'm going to copy it. So the reason that I'm copying it is because I don't want to glitch up my only copy. That would be kind of a bummer. So, and I could just paste it again. So that's great. Now I have this copy file that I can work with, and if it doesn't work out, oh well, I'll just delete it. It's no big deal. In order to do this, I'm going to use a text editor called BBEdit, which if you're on a Mac, I think that's probably the best choice. Is it the greatest text editor in the world? No. I have lots of other text editors installed on my computer that I like to use. Is it the best text editor for doing the exact thing that we're doing right now? Yeah, it's pretty good, and there aren't a lot of text editors that allow you to do this. So we're going to go ahead and use BB Edit. So you can find that in my applications. And here it is. It's nagware, so you're just sort of asking to, you know, say, sure, yes, I would like to keep using it. So after you open BB Edit, it's best to go to open the file through the File Open command, which is right here. And I'm going to find that image. If you go to Options, there's an important box that you have to check here. You should really check the box that says Show Hidden Items, because otherwise you're not going to be able to click on the JPEG. All right. Wow, okay, that is a lot of stuff. So as you can see, even though this is not a huge image, let me show you how large the image is. It's about 1,000 pixels by 720 pixels, I think. And you may find yourself looking at larger images. I mean, I guess you can, but I would make sure that the image is no more than 1,000 pixels in any dimension, just because you don't want to have to scroll for like the rest of your life, you know, it'll just be too long. So you can look at the image size real easily by just coming into the Finder, and you can actually look right here, it's got the pixel size. So the dimensions of this image are 1200 by 859. So it's a little on the large side. And I mean, you can see that we've got just like tons of code here. Okay, so now comes the glitchin' part. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't mess with the probably first like 10 lines, first 10 or 15 lines, and the bottom 10 or 15 lines. If you can, stay away from those. So I'm going to take just a chunk, and I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to go a little bit higher up in the file, and I'm going to paste it. And at this point, I can just save my work. It's probably a good idea to kind of save as you go, because it is going to get just progressively weirder. So right now you can see that that has definitely done some things. It just kind of interrupted that grid on the bottom, and it looks like it even flipped it backwards. So that's kind of fun. I'd like to do something to kind of the middle area. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I think I'm going to kind of try to select multiple chunks at once. Oh, well, never mind. So now I'm going to take this chunk and just kind of pepper it throughout the file. And once again, I'm going to save it. Remove my, save. And now I'm going to go back into the Finder. Whoa, that's different. So that apparently brought the yellow. And now we could take this part and I'm just kind of randomly selecting and pasting chunks of the code. And you don't have to go too overboard with this. You know, you can get pretty crazy pretty quickly. So when you get it to a point where you feel like it's nice and glitchy, you can go ahead and just save it, and you can submit it directly as a JPEG to Canvas. So it's automatically a JPEG as long as you don't mess with these 3 letters. I would really have fun with it. You know, maybe try to make a couple copies of the file and try to make a couple of different versions. You may find that, you know, you get different effects, you know, if you take big chunks versus small chunks. It's really just designed for you to kind of experiment. I do think it's a good process to kind of check your work occasionally. So I would spend some time, you know, going back and forth and checking as you go. So just to kind of wrap it up, I'll show you how to go ahead and just call this done. You save it. Let's get in BB Edit. Go ahead and save. We've already did that. So it's saved. And now we can just quit out of BB Edit. And let's see, my file is lurking here. And so that's the file that I want to submit for my assignment. And I have successfully broken this image. All right, so I'm hoping that this coming week I'll be able to answer some of your questions in a separate video. So I'm going to be looking online on Canvas to see some questions from you that I can answer in the video format. And I look forward to seeing what you all are thinking. All right. Have a great evening. Bye.